On a bright autumn morning in the Aegean Sea, off the coast of a tiny Greek island, a giant is dying. His Majesty's hospital ship Britannic, one of the largest vessels ever built, has been mortally wounded. She is sinking fast. The date is November 21st, 1916. The time is 8:12 in the morning, European Eastern Time. On the bridge, Captain Charles Alfred Bartlett stands processing what has just occurred. The explosion came from the starboard bow, somewhere forward, deep in the belly of the ship. The sound was not the dull thud of a collision. This was different, sharper, more violent, the kind of sound that means catastrophe. Around him, the pristine white hull of the Britannic gleams in the Mediterranean sun. Bold green stripes run horizontally along her length, punctuated by 3 massive red crosses on each side, the international symbols of mercy, healing, and protection under the laws of war. Her 4 yellow funnels tower above the decks, smoke still rising lazily into the clear blue sky, as if nothing has occurred. But something has occurred. Deep below, in the forward compartments, water is already pouring through a gaping wound torn open by a German mine. The ship, designed to be the safest ocean liner ever built, engineered to correct every fatal flaw that doomed her sister Titanic 4 years earlier, has 55 minutes to live. Aboard are 1,066 souls, 673 crew members, 315 men of the Royal Army Medical Corps, 77 nurses, and the captain himself. There are no patients, not yet. Britannic is empty, steaming toward the island of Lemnos to collect the sick and wounded from the brutal campaigns of the Eastern Mediterranean. She has made this voyage 5 times before without incident. This was meant to be routine. The ship shudders. Somewhere far below, watertight doors are slamming shut, or trying to. Reports begin arriving at the bridge, and none bring good news. Bartlett, known to his crew as Iceberg Charlie for his rumored ability to sense ice in darkness, orders distress signals sent immediately. He orders all watertight doors closed. He calculates the damage, running through everything he knows about this ship's revolutionary design. 6 compartments can flood, he thinks. 6. She can survive 6 flooded compartments. He does not yet know that nurses, preparing the wards for incoming patients, had opened dozens of portholes along the lower decks to ventilate the ship, directly against standing orders. For now, Captain Bartlett stands on the bridge of the largest, safest, most advanced hospital ship in the world, and he makes a decision. Kia Island lies only 3 miles away. If he can beach the ship on soft sand, she will not sink. She cannot sink. The ship shudders. Somewhere far below, watertight doors are slamming shut, or trying to. Reports begin arriving at the bridge, and none bring good news. He orders full speed ahead. The story of how Britannic came to be here, floating in the Aegean, mortally wounded, racing against time, begins not in the chaos of war, but in the elegance of an Edwardian dinner party 9 years earlier, on a summer night in London. Chapter 1. Dinner and Destiny. The year is 1907. In a comfortable London dining room, 2 men are about to alter the course of maritime history. Joseph Bruce Ismay serves as managing director of the White Star Line, one of Britain's most prestigious transatlantic shipping companies. He is a man with vision and a problem. His company's ships are being outclassed by their rivals at Cunard, whose new express liners, Lusitania and Mauretania, dominate the Atlantic. These ships are fast, glamorous, and wildly popular. Newspapers cannot stop writing about them. Passengers clamor to sail aboard them. White Star is losing the race for supremacy on the world's most profitable shipping route. Sitting across from him is Lord William Peary, chairman of Harland and Wolff, the Belfast shipyard that has built nearly every White Star vessel for decades. The 2 men are old friends, partners in an arrangement that has produced some of the finest ships ever to sail. Over dinner, they will not compete with Cunard on speed. That is a losing proposition, expensive and dangerous. Instead, they will compete on size and luxury. They will build ships so large, so opulent, so comfortable that passengers will choose White Star, not for the thrill of speed, but for the experience of crossing the Atlantic in unparalleled elegance. 3 ships, a trio of floating palaces, each one bigger and more magnificent than anything the world has seen. The first 2 ships are ordered almost immediately. Olympic, the lead ship of the class, and Titanic, slightly improved and even more luxurious. Construction begins in Belfast in 1908 and 1909, respectively. The ships are so massive that Harland and Wolff constructs an enormous steel structure, the Errol Gantry, to shelter them during construction. It spans 2 building slips, allowing both ships to be built simultaneously. The plan works brilliantly. Olympic enters service in June 1911 to tremendous fanfare. She is an instant success. Passengers adore her. The press calls her a marvel. White Star reclaims its position. Then, on April 15, 1912, everything shatters. Titanic strikes an iceberg on her maiden voyage and sinks in less than 3 hours. The disaster ranks among the worst peacetime maritime catastrophes in history, sending shockwaves around the globe. In Belfast, the news strikes like a thunderbolt. The men and women who built Titanic, who drove every rivet, carved every panel, fitted every piece of machinery, are devastated. 10 members of the shipyard's guarantee group had sailed with the ship to ensure perfect operation. All 10 are dead, including Thomas Andrews, Harland and Wolff's managing director and chief designer of the Olympic-class ships. Andrews was 39 years old. Sitting on the slipway at Harland and Wolff, unfinished and silent, is the hull of the third ship, Hull 433. Whether this ship was ever intended to be called gigantic remains a subject of debate. Harland and Wolff's archive manager later stated he never saw official reference to that name. Regardless, after the disaster there is no appetite for a name inviting comparisons to the doomed Titanic. The ship will be called Britannic, named for the British Empire itself. Britannic will not be the ship originally planned. The loss of Titanic has exposed fatal flaws in the Olympic-class design. Those flaws must be corrected. Thomas Andrews is gone, so the task falls to his deputy, Edward Wilding. Wilding had worked closely with Andrews on Olympic and Titanic. He provided testimony at the inquiries into Titanic's sinking. He oversaw much of the retroactive safety work performed on Olympic in the disaster's aftermath. Now, with Britannic still unfinished on the slipway, he possesses a unique opportunity, a blank slate. He can redesign the ship from the foundation upward. The changes are extensive, radical, and expensive. First, the ship receives a double hull, an inner skin of steel running along the engine and boiler rooms. If something pierces the outer hull, water will flood only the empty space between the 2 layers, not the vital machinery compartments. Had Titanic possessed this feature, she would have survived her encounter with the iceberg. Adding this inner skin consumes valuable interior space, requiring the ship to be widened. Britannic's beam grows from 92 feet 9 inches to 94 feet, nearly a full meter wider than her sisters. Next come the watertight bulkheads. On Titanic, these vertical walls divided the ship into watertight compartments meant to contain flooding. But the bulkheads only reached as high as E-deck, and as Titanic's bow sank, water simply spilled over their tops, flooding one compartment after another in a deadly cascade. On Britannic, 6 of the 15 bulkheads are raised to B-deck, 40 feet above the waterline. The ship now possesses 17 watertight compartments instead of 16. More significantly, she can remain afloat with any 6 compartments flooded. Titanic could survive only 4. Then come the lifeboats. The most visible change involves massive davits, lifeboat cranes, towering over the ship's decks. These gantry davits are revolutionary. Each is powered by an electric motor and can launch 6 lifeboats stored on gantries. They can swing far from the ship's side, meaning that even if the vessel lists heavily, boats on the opposite side can still be launched. 8 sets of gantry davits are planned, though only 5 are ultimately installed. Traditional Welland-type davits are added to compensate. In total, Britannic carries 48 lifeboats, each capable of holding at least 75 people. That provides capacity for at least 3,600 passengers and crew, 300 more than the ship can actually accommodate. No one will be left behind for lack of boats. All of this requires time and money. Britannic's construction extends well beyond initial projections. Her keel was laid on November 30th, 1911. She is finally launched on February 26, 1914, more than 2 years later. Thousands of spectators gather at Harland and Wolff to watch the great hull slide into the water. There is no champagne christening, that is not White Star tradition, but there is pride. Belfast has been wounded by Titanic's loss. Now the city is determined to prove it can still build the world's finest ships. Britannic is towed to the fitting-out wharf, where transformation begins. The empty steel hull must become a functioning vessel. Heavy machinery is loaded aboard. Boilers, engines, massive propeller shafts thicker than the trunks of ancient trees. The ship will be powered by a combination of two triple-expansion steam engines driving the outboard wing propellers and a low-pressure turbine driving the center propeller. To compensate for the ship's increased width and weight, the turbine is upgraded to produce 18,000 horsepower instead of 16,000. It becomes the largest low-pressure turbine ever built for a passenger liner. Beyond machinery, this ship is meant for luxury. Harland and Wolff's master craftsmen swarm aboard to create interiors surpassing even Titanic's famed splendor. The first-class grand staircase, the crown jewel of Olympic and Titanic, is completely redesigned. On Britannic, it will be even more ornate, with intricate balustrades and decorative panels. Crowning it all, a towering pipe organ. A Welta Philharmonic organ is ordered from Germany, meant to play for passengers as they ascend and descend the magnificent staircase. The swimming pool, found on Olympic, is overhauled entirely. Bare steel is clad with marble panels. Structural columns are disguised. Everything evokes elegance and comfort. Nearly every first-class cabin will feature a private bathroom, unprecedented for ocean liners, where even the wealthiest passengers usually share communal facilities. There is a hair salon for female passengers, a playroom for children, enhanced dining rooms, veranda cafes. Britannic is being constructed to be the finest ship afloat. Then, in August 1914, the world ignites. War erupts across Europe. Britain honors its treaty obligations and enters the conflict. Within weeks, the most destructive war in human history is underway. The transatlantic passenger trade collapses almost overnight. Most ships are mothballed, their services suspended. Those remaining in operation are requisitioned by the government as troop transports, armed merchant cruisers, supply vessels. Work on Britannic slows dramatically. The Admiralty prioritizes warship construction. Raw materials are diverted to destroyers, battleships, cruisers. The luxury liner sitting half-finished at Belfast becomes an afterthought. She sits for months, unfinished, her magnificent interiors incomplete, her destiny uncertain. The ship was meant to symbolize luxury, safety, and human achievement, a correction of Titanic's flaws, a testament to engineering brilliance. Instead, she is about to become something entirely different. Chapter 2. Building the Safest Ship. While Britannic sits incomplete in Belfast, the war advances with horrifying speed. By 1915, the conflict has proven far from the quick, glorious campaign everyone expected. In February 1915, British and French forces launch an offensive in the Mediterranean. The target is the Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey. The plan is audacious. Success could break the stalemate and bring swift conclusion. Commonwealth forces, British, Australian, New Zealand, storm the beaches expecting weak, disorganized resistance. Machine guns rake the beaches. Artillery pounds the landing sites. The invaders never advance more than 2.5 miles inland before being stopped cold. The campaign becomes a slaughter. By September, battlefield wounds account for only a fraction of casualties. Disease kills more men than bullets. Every week, 2,000 men require medical transport. That amounts to more than half a division every month. The Admiralty examines the great ocean liners sitting idle in British ports and recognizes a solution. These massive ships can carry thousands of people. They possess speed sufficient to evade submarines. They offer space for conversion into floating hospitals. One by one, the great luxury liners are requisitioned. Cunard's Mauretania and Aquitania, White Star's Olympic, they are repainted and pressed into service, first as troop transports, later as hospital ships. In Belfast, officials turn their attention to the unfinished Britannic. On November 13, 1915, the Admiralty requisitions her. She is not complete. Luxury fittings are only partially installed, many systems remain unfinished, but time has run out. She is needed immediately. The transformation proceeds with brutal efficiency. Everything luxurious is stripped away or placed in storage. The grand staircase remains, but the pipe organ meant to crown it never arrives from Germany. Germany is now the enemy. Elegant first-class cabins are gutted. In their place, 3,309 hospital beds are installed. First-class dining rooms become operating theaters. Spacious public rooms transform into medical wards, filled row upon row with iron-framed cots. On B deck, quarters house doctors and nurses. At the stern, far from where patients will be, housed, a morgue is constructed. Additional lifeboat davits are installed to increase capacity further. The ship's exterior is repainted in internationally recognized hospital ship colors: pure white hull, a horizontal green stripe running the vessel's length, and 3 massive red crosses on each side. Her funnels, which would have been White Star's signature buff color, are painted bright yellow. At night, the ship can be illuminated like a floating beacon. Hundreds of green lamps hang from the promenade deck. There can be no mistaking what she represents. Under the Hague Convention of 1907, hospital ships used purely for humanitarian purposes are protected from attack. They cannot be fired upon. They cannot be torpedoed. They must be allowed to pass unmolested. Of course, this is 1915, and Germany has already demonstrated willingness to sink civilian ships. On December 12, 1915, Britannic is declared fit for service. She is assigned a medical team, 101 nurses, and a crew of 675. Command falls to Captain Charles Alfred Bartlett, a veteran White Star Line captain with more than 2 decades of experience. He's also known as Holy Stone Charlie for his insistence on spotless decks. Bartlett possesses intimate knowledge of these Olympic-class ships. He had served as White Star's Marine Superintendent, a position granting him direct involvement in design discussions for Olympic and Britannic. He understands these vessels better than almost anyone alive. On December 23, 1915, 2 days before Christmas, Britannic departs Liverpool on her maiden voyage. The ship slips away quietly, bound for Mudros on the Greek island of Lemnos off the Gallipoli coast. Among those aboard is a nurse named Violet Jessup. Violet is 28 years old, originally from Argentina. In 1911, she had been working as a stewardess aboard Olympic when the ship collided with the British cruiser HMS Hawke. The collision tore a massive hole in Olympic's hull, but the ship reached port safely. Then, in April 1912, Violet was working aboard Titanic. She survived that sinking, pulled from the freezing North Atlantic after spending hours in a lifeboat, watching the great ship disappear beneath the waves. It was the most horrifying night of her life. Now, 3.5 years later, she is aboard Britannic, the third and final sister. She is not the only Titanic survivor aboard. John Priest is a stoker, a coal trimmer who works deep in the ship's belly, feeding the boilers that power the engines. He is 41 years old. He was in Titanic's boiler room when the iceberg tore open the hull. He barely escaped. And there is Archie Jewell, one of Titanic's lookouts. He had been off duty when the iceberg was spotted, but he assisted with the evacuation and escaped alive. 3 people, 3 survivors of Titanic, all aboard Britannic. The ship arrives at Mudros without incident. Smaller hospital ships come alongside and patients are transferred aboard. Britannic's vast wards fill with the sick and wounded. On January 9, 1916, she arrives back at Southampton. Her first voyage is complete. She has brought home over 3,000 casualties. She makes a second voyage, then a third, then a fourth, and a fifth. By all measures, she performs admirably. Her medical facilities are excellent. Patients recover during the voyage, tended by skilled doctors and nurses. The ship even spends 4 weeks anchored off the Isle of Wight, serving as a floating hospital. For many wounded soldiers, Britannic represents the first safe, clean, comfortable environment they have experienced in months or even years. Private Ray Atkinson, transferred aboard after evacuation from Gallipoli, climbs 5 flights of stairs from the gangway just to reach the boat deck. Life aboard settles into routine. Patients wake at 6 in the morning. Breakfast at 6:30. Captain Bartlett tours for inspection at noon. Lunch at 12:30. Tea at 4:30. Lights out at 8:30. By June 1916, the Gallipoli campaign has long concluded. The peninsula was evacuated in January. With fewer casualties arriving from the eastern Mediterranean, the Admiralty decides Britannic is no longer needed. On June 6th, She is released from hospital ship duty and sent back to Belfast. Finally, she will be converted into the luxury liner she was always meant to be. The hospital beds are removed. Operating theaters are dismantled. White Star pays £75,000, roughly $2 million in today's currency, to complete the ship's transformation. Craftsmen return. Luxury fittings are reinstalled. First-class staterooms are completed. For 2 months, hope exists. Perhaps Britannic will survive the war. Perhaps she will finally carry paying passengers across the Atlantic, as Olympic and Titanic were intended to do. But on the Western Front, catastrophe unfolds. On July 1, 1916, the British launch a massive offensive along the Somme River in France. It is meant to be the decisive blow, the attack that will shatter the German lines and end the war. It becomes a disaster. It is the bloodiest single day in British Army history. The offensive continues for months. By November, over 400,000 British and Commonwealth soldiers will be casualties. The need for hospital ships becomes critical once more. On August 26, 1916, just 10 weeks after being released, Britannic is recalled to duty. Britannic makes a 4th voyage to the Mediterranean in September, then a 5th in October, marred by a food poisoning outbreak among the crew that results in quarantine upon arrival at Mudros. She is a hospital ship. That is all she will ever be. Chapter 3. The Angel of the Aegean. By autumn 1916, Britannic has established herself as one of the largest and most capable hospital ships in the world. She operates alongside her older sister Olympic, serving as a troop transport, and Cunard's great liners Mauretania and Aquitania. Together, these giants of the transatlantic trade have been transformed into workhorses of Britain's war effort. Depart Southampton, pass through the Strait of Gibraltar into the Mediterranean, stop at Naples for coal and water, then continue east to Mudros on the island of Lemnos. There, smaller hospital ships and transports come alongside, wounded are transferred aboard, and the long voyage home begins. For Violet Jessup, working as a nurse aboard Britannic, the experience carries surreal weight. Now she serves aboard Titanic's younger sister, steaming through warm Mediterranean waters, surrounded by soldiers who survived the horrors of Gallipoli and the Balkans. The ship feels safe, but fear lurks constantly beneath the surface. Vera Britton, a Red Cross volunteer who served aboard Britannic on an earlier voyage, later wrote about the persistent dread. I remember the feelings of terror, the dark hours used to bring us on the Britannic. She would wake at night and listen to the thrashing propellers, the whistling wind through the rigging, the rush of water against the hull. The Mediterranean in 1916 is perilous. German U-boats operate with near impunity. Mines drift in shipping lanes. Just over a year earlier, in May 1915, Cunard's Lusitania had been torpedoed off the Irish coast, killing nearly 1,200 people. The attack shocked the world but did not stop the Germans. Britannic sails fully illuminated at night, red crosses lit with electric bulbs, green lamps strung along her decks. She is painted in unmistakable hospital ship colors. Under international law, she cannot be attacked, but international law does not stop mines. On November 12, 1916, Britannic departs Southampton for her 6th voyage to the Mediterranean. It is Sunday afternoon when she leaves port. Notably, there are no patients. Britannic is empty, heading east to collect the wounded. The vast hospital wards are prepared and waiting. Beds are made. Operating theaters stand ready. But for now, the ship is eerily quiet, staffed only by those who will care for casualties once they are brought aboard. The voyage begins without incident. Britannic passes through the Strait of Gibraltar around midnight on November 15th and arrives at Naples on the morning of November 17th. As always, the ship stops to take on coal and water, necessary resupply before the final leg to Mudros. A storm rolls in, trapping the ship at Naples. Heavy seas and fierce winds make departure impossible. By Sunday afternoon, November 19th, a brief break appears in the weather. Bartlett decides to take advantage and orders departure. Better to make progress than remain idle. The seas rise again almost immediately as Britannic leaves Naples. The ship pitches and rolls through rough water. But by Monday morning, the storm has subsided. The ship passes through the Strait of Messina Without trouble, the weather becomes beautiful, the Mediterranean at its finest. On the morning of November 21st, Britannic rounds Cape Matapan, the southernmost point of mainland Greece. She is making full speed now, 21 knots, steaming northeast toward Mudros. Her course takes her through the Key Channel, a stretch of water between the Greek mainland and the island of Kea, approximately 40 miles southeast of Athens. It is a well-traveled route used by Allied shipping. Unknown to anyone aboard Britannic, 3 weeks earlier, on October 21st, a German submarine had been here. SMU-73, commanded by Kapitänleutnant Gustav Seiss, had spent hours laying a minefield across the channel. 24 mines in total, each containing 290 pounds of wet gun-cotton explosive. The mines are tethered to the seabed by chains, floating just beneath the surface, invisible and waiting. Seiss did not lay these mines specifically to target hospital ships. He laid them to sink anything and everything. Now, 3 weeks later, Britannic is steaming directly through that minefield. On the bridge, Captain Bartlett stands with Chief Officer Robert Hume and Fourth Officer McTowis. On the forward decks, nurses have opened portholes to air out the hospital wards in preparation for the patients they will take aboard later today. It violates standing orders. Portholes are meant to remain closed while at sea, but it is a hot morning, and fresh air will make the wards more comfortable for wounded men. Everything proceeds normally. Then, at 8:12 in the morning, an explosion tears through the forward part of the ship. Chapter 4: The Sixth Voyage. The explosion is deafening. Within moments, the room stands empty and silent. Further aft, where the explosion's force was less severe, not everyone immediately grasps what has happened. Some believe the ship has collided with a smaller vessel. Shockwaves ripple through the ship's steel hull, a deep vibration signaling that something is profoundly wrong. In his cabin, Fifth Officer Gordon Fielding is thrown across the room. Furniture, belongings, gear, everything rains down from shelves and cabinets. Down in the forward boiler rooms, chaos erupts. Stoker Bert Smith is working in the fireman's tunnel. The explosion occurs directly above him. A massive wall of seawater comes roaring through the tunnel, sweeping him off his feet. He grabs desperately for a handrail and hauls himself toward the emergency staircase. His lungs burn, his ears ring, but he makes it out. Not everyone escapes. On the bridge, Captain Bartlett and Chief Officer Hume immediately spring into action. Bartlett orders the watertight doors closed and sends out a distress signal. He orders the crew to prepare lifeboats, but not to lower them yet. Reports begin arriving. The explosion occurred on the starboard side between cargo holds 2 and 3. The blast tore a massive hole in the hull. Water is flooding into the first 4 watertight compartments at alarming speed, but that is survivable. Britannic was designed for this. She can remain afloat with 6 compartments flooded, then more reports arrive. The fireman's tunnel between the bow and boiler room 6 is severely damaged. The watertight door there is jammed open and cannot be closed. Water is pouring through the tunnel into boiler room 6, 5 compartments flooding. Then comes the worst news. The watertight door between boiler rooms 6 and 5 has failed to close. The explosion must have warped the door frame or bent the tracks along which the door slides. Water is now flooding into boiler room 5 as well. 6 compartments. Britannic can stay afloat with 6 compartments flooded, but only if she remains stationary. If she stays still, the water will stabilize. But there is one more problem, the one that will doom the ship: the open portholes. As the bow begins sinking under the weight of flooding compartments, the ship's stern rises slightly. The vessel develops a list to starboard, the side where the explosion occurred. Within 15 minutes of the blast, water begins lapping at portholes on E deck and F deck. Seawater pours through them like rivers. The water does not remain neatly contained in forward compartments. It floods aft, spilling over the tops of watertight bulkheads, cascading into compartments that should have remained dry. All of the safety improvements made after Titanic, the double hull, the raised bulkheads, the increased number of watertight compartments, are being defeated by something as simple as open windows. Bartlett recognizes the ship is in mortal danger, but he is not prepared to surrender. He looks toward the island of Kea, shimmering in the distance, only 3 miles away. If he can beach the ship on soft sand off the island's coast, she will not sink. He orders the engines restarted and the ship turned toward Kea. But there is a problem. The explosion has damaged the steering gear. The rudder is not responding properly. To steer the ship, Bartlett must use the propellers, ordering the port engine to run faster than the starboard engine, which will swing the bow right toward the island. On the boat deck, crew members are preparing lifeboats. The list to starboard is increasing. The ship is visibly sinking by the bow. Some of the crew grow nervous. Bartlett's orders are clear. Prepare the boats, but do not lower them. Not yet. The propellers are still turning, churning the water at the stern. Launching lifeboats while the ship remains in motion would be catastrophic. But at 8:30, just 18 minutes after the explosion, 2 officers make a fateful decision. Third Officer Francis Laws, convinced the ship is sinking too rapidly and that waiting for orders will cost lives, instructs the occupants of 2 lifeboats on the port side to lower themselves into the water. The boats descend using automatic davit mechanisms. They drop smoothly down the ship's side and splash into the sea. The falls are released. The boats drift free. At first, the occupants do not understand the danger. They watch as Britannic continues slowly forward, still turning toward Kea. Everything appears under control. Then they see it. The bow has sunk so low that the stern has risen. The massive bronze propellers, each weighing tons, designed to drive a 50,000-ton ship through the ocean, are now exposed above the waterline. And they are still spinning. The 2 lifeboats, drifting in the current, are being pulled inexorably toward the propellers. Panic erupts. Some people dive overboard immediately, swimming desperately away from the ship. Others freeze, paralyzed by terror. The boats drift closer. Then the first boat makes contact. The propeller blades strike the wooden hull. The boat is destroyed instantly. People are thrown into the water. The second boat meets the same fate moments later. 30 people lose their lives in these moments, the single deadliest incident of the entire disaster. Violet Jessup has spent years working aboard ships, but she never learned to swim. She jumps anyway. The water rushes up. Suddenly she is submerged, completely underwater for the first time in her life. She kicks wildly, desperately, clawing at the water. Something strikes her head, hard. It is the keel of the lifeboat she just abandoned, now floating above her. The impact injures her severely, but it also pushes her away from the propellers. She breaks the surface, gasping, and swims away from the ship with every ounce of strength she possesses. Her vision blurs. Behind her, debris floats on the churning water. John Priest, the stoker, is in the water as well. He jumped when he saw the propellers approaching, and the impact pushes him under the spinning blades instead of into them. These 2 lifeboats account for 30 of the disaster's casualties. On the bridge, Captain Bartlett still does not know what has occurred. He is focused on steering the ship toward Kea, fighting to keep her on course as she settles deeper into the water. Then word reaches him. 2 boats have been launched prematurely, and they have been drawn into the propellers. A 3rd boat is about to suffer the same fate. Bartlett immediately orders the engines stopped. The order comes just in time. The 3rd lifeboat, already lowering toward the water, drifts against the now stationary propeller blades. The occupants push themselves away with oars and poles. The boat floats clear. They survive. It is now 8:35 in the morning, 23 minutes since the explosion. Bartlett orders the ship abandoned. Over the next 25 minutes, 35 lifeboats are successfully launched. Major Harold Priestley of the Royal Army Medical Corps takes charge of the orderlies, organizing them into groups and sending them to the boat deck in batches of 50 men at a time. He personally inspects cabins to ensure no one is left behind. Officers and crew work methodically, loading boats and lowering them smoothly. The massive gantry davits perform admirably. The electric motors swing boats far from the ship's side, even as the list increases, and lower them steadily into the sea. But even as evacuation proceeds, Bartlett is not prepared to surrender. By 8:50, most people aboard have been successfully evacuated. The ship is settling lower, but she remains afloat. Bartlett looks toward Kea, so close now, perhaps 2 miles away, and makes a decision. He orders the engines restarted. If he can just get the ship a little closer, perhaps he can still beach her. Perhaps this does not have to end in total loss. The propellers begin turning again. Britannic limps forward. Bow down, listing heavily to starboard, but still moving. For 10 minutes, Bartlett holds hope. Then, at 9 o'clock in the morning, word comes from below. Water has reached D-deck. The flooding is accelerating. The forward motion of the ship is forcing more water through the open portholes, faster than the pumps can manage. There is no more time. Bartlett gives the final order. Stop the engines. He walks to the ship's whistle and pulls the cord twice. 2 long, mournful blasts echo across the water, the signal to abandon ship. Everyone who hears it knows what it means. Captain Bartlett, Chief Officer Hume, and Chief Engineer Robert Fleming are the last 3 men aboard. They stand together on the bridge as water begins lapping at their feet. The bow is submerged now, completely underwater. The ship is rolling onto her starboard side. One by one, the 3 officers walk to the bridge's edge and step into the water. It is waist-deep now, rising rapidly. They swim away from the ship, making for a nearby collapsible lifeboat. Captain Bartlett is the last to leave. As tradition dictates, the captain leaves his ship last. He climbs into the collapsible boat and turns to watch. The ship is dying. The bow has struck the seabed. At 400 feet, the water here is shallower than the ship is long. The impact causes massive structural damage to the forward section, crushing and buckling the steel. But the stern remains afloat, rising higher and higher as the bow is pinned to the bottom. The first funnel collapses, toppling over and crashing into the sea with an enormous splash. Moments later, the second funnel goes, then the third, then the fourth. Davits begins sliding forward. Britannic rolls further onto her starboard side. Her massive hull, gleaming white with the green stripe and red crosses, is now almost horizontal. Violet Jessup, pulled into a motor launch and wrapped in a blanket, watches the final moments. She later describes the scene. All the deck machinery fell into the sea like a child's toys. Then she took a fearful plunge, her stern rearing hundreds of feet into the air, until with a final roar, she disappeared into the depths, the noise of her going resounding through the water with undreamt-of violence. At 9:07 in the morning, 55 minutes after the explosion, HMHS Britannic slips beneath the surface of the Aegean Sea. She is gone. The largest hospital ship in the world. The most advanced ocean liner ever built. The ship designed to be unsinkable, engineered to correct every flaw that doomed Titanic. Gone in less than an hour. Chapter 5. Aftermath and What Never Was. The lifeboats drift on calm blue water, scattered across a mile of sea. 35 boats, plus collapsibles and rafts. Over 1,000 people, many injured, all in shock. Local fishermen from the island of Kea arrive first, rowing their small kayaks out to the survivors. They pull people from the water, offer what comfort they can, and begin ferrying the injured toward shore. At 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 British warships arrive. HMS Scourge and HMS Heroic had been patrolling nearby when they received Britannic's distress signal. Unknown to anyone aboard Britannic, the ship's antenna wires snapped during the explosion. Britannic could send signals but could not receive them. Now help has arrived. The 2 warships set about rescue with grim efficiency. There is no room left on either ship. Decks are crammed with people, many wounded, all soaked and shivering despite the warm Mediterranean air. Approximately 150 survivors reach Corycia, the small port on Kea. Surviving doctors and nurses from Britannic establish a makeshift field hospital on the quayside, using torn aprons and pieces of life belts as bandages. They work through the morning and into the afternoon, treating the injured with whatever supplies they can gather. At 11:45, another British warship arrives, HMS Foxhound. She sweeps the area searching for more survivors, then anchors at Corycia at 1 in the afternoon to take aboard remaining survivors and offer medical assistance. At 2 o'clock, the light cruiser HMS Foresight arrives. By this point, nearly everyone has been accounted for. Sergeant William Sharp of the Royal Army Medical Corps had been pulled from the water alive, but died of his injuries shortly after rescue. He is 39 years old, a veteran of the South African campaign. He is given a military funeral and buried on Kea. 3 more men die during the voyage to Piraeus, 2 aboard HMS Heroic, 1 aboard the French tug Goliath. They are buried with military honors at the Piraeus Naval and Consular Cemetery. Out of 1,066 people aboard Britannic, 1,036 survive. Most died in the 2 lifeboats drawn into the propellers. It is a tragedy. 30 lives lost is always a tragedy, but compared to Titanic, it constitutes a miracle. First, water temperature. The North Atlantic in April is lethally cold, cold enough to kill within 15 minutes. The Aegean in November is cold, but survivable for hours. Second, lifeboats. Titanic had boats for roughly half her passengers and crew, and even those were not properly filled. Britannic had boats for everyone. The gantry davits made launching them faster and easier. Third, proximity to land and assistance. Titanic sank in the middle of the North Atlantic, hundreds of miles from shore. The nearest ship, Carpathia, required 3.5 hours to arrive. Britannic sank just 3 miles from Kea, in a busy shipping lane. Help arrived in less than 2 hours. Fourth, and grimmest of all, there were no patients aboard. Had Britannic been loaded with 3,000 wounded soldiers, many immobile on stretchers, the death toll would have been catastrophic. As it stands, the evacuation of Britannic ranks among the most successful in maritime history. But that does not diminish the bitterness of the loss. Survivors are taken to Phaleron, where they are housed in hotels while arrangements are made to send them home. A week-long inquiry is convened aboard HMS Duncan. Captain Hugh Hurd and Captain George Stayer review evidence, interview survivors, and compile a report. The conclusion is straightforward. The ship was likely struck by a mine, not a torpedo. The German submarine U-73 had laid a minefield in the Key Channel 3 weeks earlier. Britannic steamed into it and struck one of the mines. The press, predictably, prints more dramatic accounts. Some newspapers claim the ship was carrying 1,000 wounded patients and that heroic doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to save them all. This is entirely false. There were no patients aboard, but it makes better headlines. Britannic becomes the largest ship lost during the First World War, the biggest passenger ship ever to sink, yet her story is quickly forgotten. There is no massive public outcry, no international scandal. Lusitania's sinking had provoked outrage because 1,200 civilians died, many of them American. Britannic's loss is different. She was a military vessel operating in a war zone. The death toll was small. The story does not capture public imagination the way Titanic's did. After the war ends in 1918, White Star is compensated for Britannic's loss. As part of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany is forced to hand over several ocean liners as reparations. White Star receives 2, SS Bismarck, which is renamed Majestic, and SS Columbus, which becomes Homeric. Majestic essentially replaces Britannic. Violet continues working aboard ships and eventually retires. She survives not just 2 sinkings but 3 major maritime incidents involving Olympic-class liners. The wreck of Britannic lies where she fell, on the seabed off the coast of Kea. She is not deep, only approximately 400 feet down, less than half her overall length. Compare that to Titanic, which rests at a depth exceeding 12,000 feet, and you begin to understand why Britannic has been explored so extensively. In November 1975, oceanographer Jacques Cousteau discovers the wreck using side-scan sonar. The following year, he and his team dive on her, filming the expedition for a documentary. Cousteau, seeing damage to the hull, concludes the ship was torpedoed, not mined. He is incorrect. Later expeditions find mine anchors near the wreck, confirming German records. But his documentary brings Britannic back into public awareness. In 1995, Dr. Robert Ballard, the man who discovered Titanic's wreck in 1985, leads an expedition to Britannic. His team uses remotely operated vehicles to capture extensive footage. The ship lies on her starboard side, the side where the mine struck. The massive hole is hidden beneath her, but damage to the bow is clearly visible. The impact with the seabed crushed and twisted the forward section. The bow barely remains attached to the rest of the hull. The four funnels have all collapsed and lie in the debris field. The forecastle, crew quarters at the very front, is surprisingly intact. The cargo cranes remain in place. The foremast has fallen and lies on the seabed, the crow's nest still attached. In 2019, technical divers recover the ship's bell, which had fallen from the mast and was lying directly below the crow's nest. In 1996, the wreck was purchased by Simon Mills, a maritime historian who has written extensively about Britannic. He has led multiple expeditions to the site and works to preserve the ship's memory. In 2009, a diver named Carl Spencer dies while exploring the wreck. He is filming for National Geographic when equipment failure leads to his death at 400 feet depth. It is a grim reminder that even a century later, Britannic continues claiming lives. Today, Britannic rests in relative peace. She is the largest intact passenger ship on the ocean floor. Her white paint has long since worn away, replaced by rust and marine growth. But her structure remains remarkably preserved. Divers have explored her extensively, swimming through her corridors, her engine rooms, her grand staircase. After the war, when White Star was compensated with German ships, they did not want the organ. That constitutes the tragedy of Britannic. Not that she sank, though that is tragic enough. Not that 30 people died, though every one of those deaths was waste. The real tragedy is what she never became. Britannic was designed to be the most luxurious, most advanced ocean liner in the world. She was built to correct every mistake that doomed Titanic. Instead, she spent 1 year as a hospital ship, made 6 voyages, carried no civilian passengers, and sank before fulfilling her purpose. All of the engineering brilliance poured into her design was defeated by something as simple as open portholes, and even that might not have mattered without the war. If there had been no war, Britannic would have entered service as a luxury liner in 1915. She would have crossed the Atlantic hundreds of times, carried tens of thousands of passengers. She would have competed with Cunard's Aquitania and Germany's Vaterland and Imperator for supremacy on the world's most glamorous shipping route. Children would have played in her dedicated playroom. Wealthy travelers would have bathed in private bathrooms, revolutionary luxury at the time. The pipe organ would have filled the grand staircase with music. First-class passengers would have dined in opulent salons, lounged in veranda cafes, swum in the marble-clad pool. She might have survived long enough to be converted into a troop transport during World War II. She might have been scrapped in the 1950s or 60s, her fittings salvaged, her steel melted down and reused. Instead, she had 1 year, 6 voyages. The ship that learned from Titanic's mistakes could not escape history. The ship designed to be unsinkable was destroyed by a random mine. The ship built to save lives was destroyed before fulfilling that purpose, before carrying a single paying passenger. Britannic stands as a monument to the cruelty of timing. She was born in Titanic's shadow. She died in war's grip. She was never allowed to exist as the ship she was meant to be. Today, she rests on the seabed in the Aegean, 3 miles from the island of Kea. She is the largest passenger ship ever to sink. She is the safest ship ever built, and she proved that sometimes safety is not enough. Sometimes history has other plans.